All right, welcome back to the Driveline R&D podcast. Jack Lambert here with Marek and no Josh Heshka this week. We replaced him with our director of hitting, Tanner Stokey.
Big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill, but for good reason. We got new Baseball Savant metrics, which always fun when they drop that, bring more knowledge to the game, and selfishly helpful for us because a lot of metrics we use in gym that can gain insight from in the public. So Tanner, you want to go through what exactly Baseball Savant dropped?
Yeah, so the new metrics that have dropped are more, more swing plane, bat path related, right? So we have the vertical attack angle now, we have the horizontal attack angle, we have a swing plane tilt, and
I think that's
yeah.
So vertical attack angle, we're talking at contact, the direction of the bat in the vertical direction, like relative to the ground.
Yeah, relative to the ground. So working more like north and south there. So it's like it's the angle the barrel's working at contact in the north and south, and the horizontal is just going to be working east to west, towards the foul lines.
So basically saying which direction the
sweet spot of the barrel
is headed
is moving
impact.
at contact.
Gotcha. And then swing path tilt, getting at more of the, not exactly the vertical bat angle, but kind of the bat angle relative to that horizontal plane.
It's a little more of like a planar metric than like the actual vertical bat angle at contact. So it's taking like that plane, the barrel plane, relative to the angle of the ground, relative to that zero, right? So you're going to see like steeper pass are going to be more negative, closer to like the low to mid 40s.
Yeah.
The flatter pass are going to be closer to zero, bottoming out at something like 25-ish degrees.
Yeah. I think so these metrics we've been using in-house for a while with Blast that measures the similar stuff at least.
Yeah, we've been using the Blast motion metrics since, I want to say we first started using them in 2018 in gym, and then very, very similar metrics in our motion capture lab with the market bat tracking, CV bat tracking type stuff we're doing now for the last 3-4 years. So we have a ton of experience using this data. We've been using it with all of our pro guys, all the big league guys we've worked with as long as I've been around. So really excited to see it in the public space and have the context of actual in-game data.
Yeah, and I know I have my own personal thoughts on the question. I think a lot of people see a new metric drop and they immediately think they want to bucket things good or bad, like almost have it be completely delineated of you need to be this certain way. I kind of view it more description-wise of like what's going on in the guy's swing, and different trends are going to lead to different strengths and weaknesses. But I think it'd be helpful, like, you want to talk about your perspective and how we've used metrics to train guys and whether we're hunting them or using them as context to approach things a different way.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's context. It's all descriptive, right? And that's something from experience. We lived that when we first started using Blast metrics. Like we found certain things like a good example, which obviously isn't one of the specific metrics that we have through MLB now, would be like early connection on a Blast sensor, right? Like it's the angle of your barrel relative to your spine angle at first move. It's like, in theory, you want it to be closer to 90 degrees, right? It's going to give you an idea of like your swing plane in depth, how you're entering into the zone. So it's like early on when we first started seeing that type of metric, we're like, oh man, we got to get really close to 90 with everybody, and we're living and dying by it. And we just found pretty quickly that it wasn't really relevant.
Yeah.
It's just context for like a bigger piece of the puzzle of like how your barrel's working in the zone. So it's the same thing with any of these. Like obviously bat speed is really, really important. You move the bat faster, you're going to be able to hit the ball harder. As you hit the ball harder, you're going to be more productive. Things like your attack angle, more specifically like the attack angle range window, right? That's going to give you an idea for your hardest hit balls are pretty closely going to mirror what your attack angle is at contact. Like that attack angle range window is going to give you an idea of essentially how well you're matching the trajectory of pitch planes coming into the zone. So like in theory, if you're in that attack angle range, that 5 to 20 degree window for a longer period of time, you're going to be matching pitch planes longer, you're going to be more adjustable. But even then, it's only giving you so much of the story, right? Just because you have on paper a good attack angle close to league average doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good hitter. Same thing with bat speed, same thing with your attack direction, swing plane. It's all just context for a bigger piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. I think one thing I found interesting too is like just observing you guys work with guys in the lab. Like it seems like hit tracks, that bottom right corner you always have set. You can choose a few different things. Is always that depth of contact.
Yeah, always
visual.
toggle it to the depth of contact.
Because if you were to plot all these stuff, we get it on a pitch by pitch level. They are so dependent on where you're making contact. You can increase your bat speed if you just decide you're going to hit every ball a foot further out in front of the plate. Like that's not a productive approach to being a hitter. So how do you go about like coaching wise separating that depth of contact piece from the other metrics you're seeing?
Separating them, man, I don't know if I'm ever 100% separating it, right? Like it's all context that's really important when you're like looking through the lens of like how to evaluate a hitter, how to go about making any type of swing changes, approach changes, all in the name of looking for ways to increase production. But it just matters a lot, right? Like that depth of contact is really, really important to know, right? It's like, it's pretty clear. We've seen that your bat speed and your attack angle are all going to be pretty closely correlated to your point of contact. So with both of them, right? Like with attack angle specifically, deeper in the zone, there is a downswing phase in the swing. Like you have to work down before you can start working up. So like you can think of vertical attack angle, more of like the ideal version of it when you're looking at the full signal data itself rather than just at contact. Like you can think about it like an airplane taking off. Right? It's like you're going to work negative in that downswing, bottom out and get closer to 0 degrees flatter, and then it's going to work uphill as you get further out in front. You're going to see the same thing with bat speed. Now, if you wanted to get a little bit more in depth and factor in something like acceleration, right? Like the ability to like produce speed quicker, deeper in the zone, you have faster bat speeds deeper. That's obviously valuable. But same thing with bat speed is like as you make contact further out in front, the barrel has more time to accelerate. So you're going to create more speed.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense and is very important when looking at these average values to take into account where all this stuff is happening. Like Eugenio Suarez, I think, has one of the highest attack angles in the league.
One of the highest attack angles.
Also one of the highest depths of hitting the ball so far in front. And we were looking a little bit at the relationship between like depth of contact and different metrics. And I think a guy that stuck out to me was Juan Soto, who like pretty flat swing path tilt. But his attack angle, so a lot of guys will see this 5 to 20 range is pretty hard to get into from like just the phase of your swing because it's a pretty steep descent or ascent of from once your attack angle bottoms out to catching that 520 window before you're out of it and your swing's going at a higher degree. But Soto, regardless of his depth of contact, is in that like almost all the time. And yeah, I don't know do you have any insight from the hitter's eye of what that's getting at?
So Soto has a really unique swing, like biomechanically, right? He's a guy who's like generally like really deep into his legs. Like you said, he's obviously like really flat with his bat path, and his attack angle is in like a really good range regardless of the point of contact. So that's why you see with Soto, like historically, he's been a guy who's always had pretty good power to the opposite field. Because the way he swings, his barrel is really flat. And if you want to get deeper into the things like the blast metrics, like the early connection, like he's going to float closer to like that 90-degree early connection. And his barrel essentially just like works off of his shoulder plane from deep in the zone. So he's able to turn it deep and get behind the pitch deep in the zone really well to like turn the face of the barrel, get it square to the line of the incoming pitch, to be able to square the ball up deep to the opposite field. And because it stays so tight, he's able to just stay on like that same type of plane as he gets further out in front to pull the ball. But generally, he's a guy who's had a deeper point of contact. I don't know if that's specifically his approach to try to go to the opposite field. It's like looking at his swing, looking at his bat at ball data, right? Because of that, he's like struggles to pull the ball in the air historically. It was obviously a little bit different last year in Yankee Stadium. I would assume that was
an approach
thing, right? Like get the short portion right field. It's easy to leave the yard that way, especially a guy like that who has insane bat speed. But being able to maintain that attack angle window in like deep point of contacts, further out in front point of contacts, theoretically you're going to have like a really wide margin for error in terms of like your adjustability. You're able to let the pitch travel longer to make swing decisions. I'll know that Soto's has some of the best swing decisions we've seen since he came into the league. It's like that's where you can start to see some of the signal from the swing, the biomechanics side of things of like how that maps to his on-field production.
One interesting thing we were looking at and both kind of like theorized maybe something was you were talking about the connection at impact and early connection and how that can allow you to be in those more ideal ranges throughout different points of contact. Looking at the relationship between how horizontal attack angle changes, so the attack direction metric with depth of contact, it seemed anecdotally like the guys with a stronger relationship where it's changing more dramatically are the more rotational guys that are better connected. Like that barrel's almost might as well be like a line
it's
perpendicular
like
to their
extension of like the shoulder plane as you're rotating.
Versus the guys that, correct me if I'm wrong, either like cast their hands or are getting pushy, that horizontal attack angle isn't changing much because it's kind of like linear through the zone towards the pitcher.
Yeah.
Do you think that anecdotally be true?
Yeah, we would generally see that, right? Like as you're like the flatter bat path guys who have like even on the depth side being flatter, like not talking just at contact. And this is like so dynamic.
Yeah.
Factoring in point of contact and how much these things change. But like generally like the flatter path guys, you're going to see that where there's going to be like the bigger change as they're working off of their shoulder plane. The guys that are more vertical, a lot of times you'll see some upper body sequencing issues. Sometimes torso rotates a little bit late. They take over a little bit early with their hands, their arms. So like the barrel is steeper working into the zone, and you're gonna see a bigger change in their vertical attack angle based off point of contact.
Okay.
Less so on the horizontal. And on the flip side with the flatter guys.
Okay. So tying these trends down to earth, your super steep guy, let's say James Wood, good example of super high swing path tilt. I believe he has a pretty high attack angle, could be off on that, versus a guy like Soto, who's super flat. Where are the areas that both of them are going to excel and struggle, and how is it different?
Yeah, the simplest thing is going to be like pitch type, pitch location.
Yeah.
The flatter guys are generally going to do better against flatter pitch shapes. Like you're going to see the guys make better, more consistent contact against fastballs, especially at the top of the zone with the flatter swing plane, just because your barrel is matching that plane for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
The guys that have the more vertical paths are generally going to struggle with velocity up in the zone. There's going to be, like, they may get to it still, and when they do, they're going to crush it. But you're going to see a lot more swing and miss at the top of the zone. You're going to see a lot more foul balls on fastballs, things like that. Those guys are generally going to do a really good job of crushing the low pitch. They're going to be able to elevate and drive like the hanging breaking ball, change up, something they're catching further out in front, just because they're matching that pitch plane longer on that vertical plane.
Yeah. Marek, I think this has really interesting applications to some of the stuff we do with the swing path stuff. I know we've discussed like swing decision models, and Rafael Devers, the prime example of like crushes balls beneath the zone. Should we punish him for swinging at those pitches that he's known to do damage on? Previous answer was, I don't know. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. I feel like this swing path metric data could give us that answer of what actually is your zone you should be swinging.
And right, to kind of repeat that in another phrasing, swing decisions are typically, are you making good choices? Well, the simplest form of swing decisions could be, are you swinging at strikes or taking balls? And we wanted to layer another element of, say, damage on top of that in the swing decision metrics, because not only do we want to know that you're making good decisions with regard to what an umpire might call a pitch if you don't do anything, but then additionally, like, what are your capabilities in handling a certain pitch in a certain zone? Can we refine that to be considerate of your specific swing and your ability to, as Tanner said, handle certain pitch types in certain locations that might already be accounted for, and like, let's say, our damage expectations for certain pitches. But yeah, I think tailoring everything that we have to, like, are you more likely to be able to do something with certain pitches given your swing profiles is much easier to do now that we have these qualifiers that when we just had swing bat speed and swing length to try and enhance your swing decisions based on those two metrics on their own. You're not going to get any useful information there, but certainly with the shapes of these trajectories in angle space, you actually can enhance your swing decisions, I would say.
Tanner, are there athletes you've worked with where you'll tell them as part of their pregame approach, because we do in-season support with guys, like, it's okay to look for this pitch in this spot, even if it might be a ball, or I know this pitch will be a strike, but like you just need to spit on it. Like you can't do anything with it. Are there guys where that's true?
Yeah, often. Yeah, often. Excuse me. Yeah, it's going to be less of I want you to be okay swinging at this pitch, even if it's going to be a ball. In those cases, it's more of especially like count dependent, game state dependent.
Yeah.
It's like trust to get your A swing off rather than because like something you see a lot of times, especially with higher bat to ball type hitters, is when they do expand a little bit, they tend to take a little bit off the swing.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to swing and miss, or maybe subconsciously they realize that they're swinging at a pitch they shouldn't swing.
We just talked about Jacob Wilson swinging maybe too much.
Yeah, like you'll see those guys tend to slow down a little bit for the sake of making contact, and they make really unproductive contact. On the flip side of it, you will pretty often, based off a guy's tendencies, maybe you're just looking at heat maps, but like we know our guys' bat path profile pretty well from blast data, in-gym assessments in the lab, things like that. Pretty often you'll tell guys it's like, all right, in early counts, like say the more vertical guys, it's like you tend to see a lot of fastballs up in the zone, especially with the pitcher who maybe has like lower release, flatter pitch plane, a little bit higher carry. They're just going to target that spot in the zone, and maybe it's a guy who has pretty good command, and they like nibble the corner up and away. It's like you're going to get targeted here. You just have to give up on that early in the count, let them have it, because if you do swing at it, like nothing good is going to happen. So yeah, there will be times based off their profile itself where it's like, this is probably going to be a strike, but it's not a pitch you swing at early in the count. Give it to him, because if you do swing at it, nothing productive is going to come from it.
Yeah, definitely.
How likely would you be to try and train a different, approach angle or tilt for a guy that just has to lay off certain parts of the zone? I mean, it's very hard, I would imagine, to expect a guy to develop multiple swing paths. But if you're also telling him just, punt on these sorts of offerings from the guy, and you kind of expose a part of the zone to him, at a certain point, you might have to develop
for sure
a B swing that can get you there.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. This is exactly where I wanted to go with this next. The answer to the question, unfortunately, is it depends. It depends on the guy. It depends on the time of year. Like we'll see guys that'll come in like right at the end of their season, early in the off season, and it's like really clear. You go through the assessment process. It's like, all right, this is what we see biomechanically. This is what we see with your swing path. This is what we see about your bat at ball profile, how you do against different pitch types from like lefties, righties, whole nine, all of that. And it's like, all right, you got a couple options. Like you struggle with these things. Like we see this in your biomechanics. These are some things we can change and target to go about like improving this.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, we do have some guys in season that are like, hey, like I'm getting cooked. Like absolutely torched by this. Like I have to make some sort of change. So sometimes it's as simple as like changing a guy's orientation. Sometimes you see the guys that have like the really vertical pass, they just end up getting like a ton of torso forward bend. So it's like, all right, we want to start you taller, set your sights for, we call it a top-down approach. Yeah. Set your sights for the top of the zone. And that's not necessarily like the top of the strike zone or like the rule book strike. That's like set your sights for the highest pitch you want to swing at. Whether that's like bottom of the letters, belly button high, like you're setting your sights on that pitch, and then anything above it you're laying off. But like you're setting your sights there, posture for that pitch, so you can just turn behind it, because it's much easier to adjust down than it is to work up. Yeah. You start working up, this is where it gets interesting with attack angle. It's like you add a certain amount of forward bend. As you start to work up, you're losing your posture. That's going to pull your barrel way off plane, horizontally and vertically. You see a lot of times guys that, especially guys with high attack angles, that tend to, on one hand, like the balls they crush are going to be hit really high. Yep. But as they work further out in front, again, the vertical attack angle is pretty correlated to your point of contact. As you get further out in front, your attack angle is going to get higher. And on one hand, that's good for being able to hit the ball in the air. But the higher your attack angle gets, the further you get away from the incoming pitch planes. Yep. So it's like as your attack angle is working up, say you're losing posture or just catching it further out in front, you'll see guys that with those attack angles will tend to swing over the top of the ball. They'll clip it. They'll get more topspin to the pull side, more rollovers on the ground to the pull side. So it's really interesting in that sense. And on the flip side of that, obviously guys with low attack angles are going to tend to like work down, beat balls into the ground. Yeah. So like having this data is really, really exciting for evaluating a player and understanding the why behind their bat at ball profile. And that's essentially what our assessment process is in gym. Like, we have your bat at ball profile, especially for pro guys that are in season. We know exactly how you hit the ball, where, how you perform against different pitch types. Your bat path is going to explain a lot of that. Now, there's the context of like pitch locations, timing, depth of contact, things like that. And then take that a step further, your biomechanics is going to explain a lot of how your bat's moving. And then another step further, you're on the force plates. We know how you're producing force, how you're using the ground at different points in time, how that impacts your body per se, and then how that's going to impact your bat path.
Yeah.
It's like having all this information gives so much context to understand, like, this is the problem. This is why. If we clean this thing up, it's going to do this to your bat path. This changes with your bat path. It's going to do this to your batted ball profile.
Yeah.
Do that, you're going to be night and day more productive.
Mm-hmm. I think another big benefit of having this data is it can really help us separate. I think at first it will create a division between the old school hitting coaches who are claiming you swing down at the ball, you do whatever. I think eventually it will lead to an agreement almost in that there is a difference between real versus feel.
Big difference.
Alex Rodriguez might have felt like he was swinging down at the ball. You don't hit nearly 700 home runs by swinging down at the ball. And in fact,
not possible.
There is no player in MLB this year who has a attack angle below 0. Lowest, I think, is Vlad with
average
1.
is about 1 degrees.
Yeah,
it's 1.
Yeah. So there are guys who sometimes end up with a negative attack angle, but no one on average is doing that.
And Vlad's an interesting one too, and we could maybe save that for a different podcast.
Yeah.
He's a guy who has crazy good bat speed.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very, very low average attack angle, and his point of contact is further out in front than average, right? So, like, on paper, you generally wouldn't see that. With the point of contact that far out in front, you're going to see the higher attack angle.
Mm-hmm.
So it, like, gives you some signal for what's going on with him biomechanically. Generally, with that type of swing profile, you see guys that have some issues with sequencing. They get a little upper body dominant, arms take over a little bit early. Maybe there's some, like, early side bend going on as they're pushing the hands. So the barrel's, like, shallower working into the zone. And as you're getting further out in front, you're just pushing down through contact. So Vlad, he torches balls on the ground pretty consistently. He hits the low pitch hard and often.
Mm-hmm.
Up in the zone, he doesn't make a ton of contact, but when he does and actually gets to it, he crushes it. But he tends to swing a decent amount above the belt, especially against fastballs. But the in-play rates on those aren't nearly as high as you would expect. The damage is there on the Wobbekan side, but he misses those a lot. He fouls them off all the time. He'll catch the breaking ball or change up out in front, and he'll just hammer it.
Mm-hmm.
Even because he has above average bat speed, you see that guy will tend to, like, clip the ball out in front and still be able to hit a pull side.
Yeah. I think for all the guys out there that used to preach you should swing down, it is worth shouting out, not that he needs it, the GOAT Ted Williams in 1971 writing that a slight upswing of about 10 degrees is ideal. You're a phenomenal hitting trainer. I don't know if you never saw a blast, if you could have guessed that the ideal attack angle would be 10 degrees.
It's insane. It's insane how he figured that out, how he knew it.
Yeah.
And, like, when you really take the step back to think about it, you know, it's like pitch comes down.
Yeah.
If you want to be on plane with that. Like, coaches talk all the time about, like, oh, get on plane, like, match plane, stay in the zone, like, whatever. Like, it would just make sense that you need to swing up to match that pitch plane. And especially back in the day, it's like now you see pitchers with, like, really low release heights. They're intentionally trying to do that to manipulate.
Pitches are coming in faster.
And trying to manipulate the shape of your pitches. But, like, at least from when I was growing up, it was pretty common for pitching coaches to tell guys, like, hey, you want to, like, get really high, you want to work downhill, which just, like, makes sense. Well, actually, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, hey, I want you to, like, pitchers are, like, actively trying to work downhill. And at the same time, hitting coaches are telling guys, oh, you need to swing down, you need to try to hit ground balls. While pitching coaches are actively trying to tell their pitchers, hey, you want ground balls. But the hitters are also trying.
There was one of our hitting trainers.
What the fuck are we talking about?
His old college coach, he'd preach that. He'd say, pitchers, we want to get ground balls. Hitters, we want hard ground balls. Yeah. He told him when he left,
the math
Coach,
ain't math.
One of these is wrong. Like, you can't simultaneously want both of these things.
The best outcome for the pitcher is, a ground ball. But for a hitter, you should be actively trying to hit ground balls.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
It's funny. I heard it pretty differently, personally, because I got the same downward swing thing, like the like A to C followed by hypotenuse bat path is the good bat path. But I got a lot of you're doing that to induce backspin, so not necessarily targeting ground balls, but the idea being that you don't hit it. You're not necessarily trying to hit it flush. You are actually trying to clip it. You're just trying to clip the underside of the ball and get the carry out of that. So
make that even smaller.
Yeah, right. No, it does make it. I think it's a better form of the same instruction in that you're not trying to hit ground balls necessarily, but it's not a sustainable approach by any means. But it does beg a real question in the modern day where we're not intentionally trying to clip it. We're trying to maximize flush contact quality by matching plane. I know you all talk a lot about ball flight from the hitting side as something we want to optimize. Um, how much can you try and target ball flight outcomes via swing path, or is that just
A
too
lot.
far out of your control? So you just have to worry about contact quality and matching plane.
Yeah, it's not this simple, but in terms of the inputs and outputs, the output that matters the most is your ball flight. So like anything you're doing as a hitter, it's like ball flight is going to tell the story. It's going to tell the story of your bat path. And then again, like your bat path is going to tell somewhat of a story of your biomechanics. You're going to be able to explain things in either direction that way. But yeah, to answer your question, trying to manipulate ball flight is generally one of the simplest ways to make bat path changes. Right? It's like
using that as like the external cue.
Yeah, exactly. In like motor learning, skill acquisition, like it's like again overly simplified here, but it's like the idea is that like your intention shapes action, right? So subconsciously, it's like all right, like say the guy has like a really vertical path, really loopy, they're losing the barrel, maybe there's something going on posturally. It's like the simplest thing to do with that type of guy, if you're trying to change their bat path, is just give them a lower ball flight target. And that's not per se, and this is kind of where you can kind of get into the old school versus the new school and the feel versus real, which you were talking about, Marek. It's like, yeah, you're trying to hit backspin. It's like the feel of being down there, but it's like you're not trying to be down in that case to produce backspin. You're trying to feel down to over adjust for the fact that you're too uphill. So it's like the overcorrection, and there's always a line where the overcorrection is going to work, and then you could take it too literally and go way too far with it, and then have to go back the other direction. So yeah, to answer your question, like a really good ball flight target, and again, take it a step further, the pitch shape, pitch location, the trajectory of the pitch coming in, it's all very, very important when you're thinking about anything that has to do with bat path. So,
and I see it every time I walk out onto the floor. It's whatever, some funky game going on of you're getting points for these launch angles, or the machine's at some extreme angle. And
so at the end of the day, like the ball flight is the output you're trying to optimize for at all times. Like we have our big three. We care about your bat speed, your bat to ball skills, whether that be contact quality or contact skills specifically, your swing decisions. It's like all of these are just like pieces of the puzzle, but the thing you really need to optimize for is your ball flight. But it's like ball flight is the output that matters the most for in-game performance. Like hitting the ball harder, moving the bat faster is going to impact your ball flight for sure. Like really caring about how your bat moves through space relative to pitch planes is going to help you make more contact. It's going to help you make better contact quality. So yeah, there's a lot that we do like solely focused on ball flight to kind of like reverse engineer bat path changes, reverse engineer some swing changes. Maybe we're pairing that with a different implement, use things like smash factor balls or hitting plyos to like make the contact quality aspect more difficult. You can use like a barrel loaded bat to like target a swing change, or use it to specifically feed into a flaw. So where the hitter is going to have some level of understanding of like what's going wrong and why, and how to make the adjustment through a cue or a change in ball flight target that they can kind of like take that and run with it in their training.
Seems like on Twitter, one of the main gripes with driveline training is the use of hit tracks and not accounting for spin.
Yeah.
But do I understand it correct that one of the main purposes of smash balls is to get the exaggerated spin? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Same thing with the
part of the work there. Right? Yeah.
It's like, don't get me wrong. I would love for hit tracks to have batted ball spin.
Yeah.
I've talked to him about that many times, to be very honest. So yeah, it's a limitation there, obviously, but in terms of the training space, tracking the data, the live feedback in the interface, there's nothing like it. It's the best.
And then especially when you pair it with the smash ball,
you can pair very clear smash balls. Yeah, and like obviously you can't see the spin, right?
Yeah.
But if you're clipping a smash ball, you're gonna hit it like 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 miles an hour, like softer than you would if you made flush contact. So like that, in that sense, the exit velocity is the thing that's really giving you the contact quality feedback.
Yeah, it's something I hadn't even thought about, but makes a lot of sense. Yeah, if you don't
take
perfectly
take a
square.
smash ball on the field and hit him outside.
Oh yeah,
It's like obviously the exit velocities are hot with those things. It's like on hit tracks, you'll have guys that'll like cut a ball or top spin it
yeah.
a little bit, and it's just going to go 475 feet.
But I imagine the launch angle is like drastically changing
Mhm.
much more dramatically than with a
Yeah.
baseball, which
Yeah.
is giving you that feedback
Yeah.
of
But the smash balls are awesome on the field. If you flush it, it goes a mile. But you'd be really, really surprised to see how few actually end up leaving the yard on a field. It's like a little bit of cut, a little bit of top spin. It's just going to balloon, take off.
Yeah.
It's just not going to get the carry you're looking for.
Has that been an implement you've used previously, like going to a physical field and hitting smash balls to?
Yeah. When we were first testing them out before we launched them, we took them out to the field down the street at Hogan Park.
Yeah,
a couple different times.
I'd imagine that'd be pretty powerful for an athlete to
Crazy
get that
powerful.
type of feedback.
Crazy powerful. And then take that a step further and you give them a skinny bat with like half an inch or an inch less diameter in the barrel.
Yeah.
That margin for error is even smaller. It's easier to clip the ball and not make flush contact. So in that sense, in terms of like your ideal attack angle, it's like all you're trying to do is match pitch planes and hit like that center line angle of the ball coming into the plate.
Yeah.
That's going to give you the flushest contact. That's where smash factor comes into play. So you know that the collision efficiency based off your bat speed, the exit velocity, the incoming pitch speed as it's crossing the plate.
Yeah, and that's going to really expose any, whether it's Vlad being super flat or not flat to the ball, but having a very low attack angle to the ball, or Suarez having an extremely high attack angle to the ball. Like, it's really going to force you to try and get on time in that ideal range so that you can, make flush contact.
Yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned at the very beginning of this, like all of these are, it's just descriptive.
Yeah.
It's just context, giving you an idea. You can be a very productive hitter with a 1 degree average attacking.
Yeah.
Vlad is, obviously. Now, if he raises average attack angle, I'm pretty confident in saying he would be better.
Yeah.
Right? On the flip side, like the Eugenio Suarez. Like, when that guy flushes the ball, he's like leading the league in like 430-foot homers, something like that.
Oh, probably.
It's like when he flushes it, because he has plus bat speed, high attack angle, when he flushes it, he absolutely crushes the ball and he goes on heaters.
Yeah.
But because his attack angle is so high, he's not matching pitch planes for very long. That's why you see that type of guy generally has the low batting
and
average,
especially
a ton of strikeouts.
That 19-degree attack angle, that isn't 19 every time. That's a 30, a 25,
That's the
14,
average.
whatever. When you get to a 30-degree attack angle, if VAA is coming in at like -7, like there's very little overlap.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that too, because we've used an ideal attack angle metric in gym for 4 or 5 years. And our range we use is 4 to 16. And if anything, like I personally think the better range is like 8 to 16.
Yeah.
In terms of like optimizing your ball flight. But you can absolutely go too high. I personally think 20-degree average attack angle is way too high.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're just not matching planes often. Yeah, when you make contact, you're going to have pretty productive ball flight.
Yeah.
But you're going to miss a lot. And it's the same thing on the low end of the attack angle spectrum and the same thing on the high end of the spectrum. It's like the further you get away from like the average of the trajectory, that like the vertical approach angle, that pitch plane coming into the plate, the harder it is it's going to be to consistently make flush contact.
Yeah. So
this is why we as a sabermetrics community need to end all bin metrics like this, because I was going to ask about what about the guys that average 4 degrees and 21 degrees that are going to fall off on ideal attack angle, at least the way Savant measures it. And I think that's a broad commentary on the quality of metrics like this. You see a lot of them.
Yeah, it's just going to give you a signal for what your hardest hit balls are going to look like. It's going to give you a signal for your contact ability, how you perform against different pitch types in different locations.
Yeah.
I wish it was simple, but it's not. It's pretty complicated. But there's so much value in these metrics being in the public space now that I can't wait to learn more about it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on briefly to kind of put you on the spot to explain to some people is I know we've talked about the relationship between these metrics and over the course of this podcast, we're talking about none of these are happening in a vacuum. They're all correlated. I thought what you had to say about steep swing path tilts and high attack angles being related made a lot of sense. And I haven't run the numbers to see how highly they correlate, but can you kind of explain why in a vacuum Suarez can't just decide to have a 10-degree attack angle tomorrow when he has such a steep swing path tilt? Why being so vertically tilted almost forces the higher attack angle or further out in front depth of contact?
Yeah, good question. So it's like essentially the simplest way I think to explain it is for like again, oversimplifying this.
Yeah.
To make the flushest contact, people talk about squaring up the baseball.
Yeah.
The way I think about squaring up the baseball, you think about like the incoming line of the pitch, vertically and horizontally, right? To make the flushest contact, you need your barrel to be perpendicular to that line.
Yep.
And like lined up with the center line angle of it. It's like essentially if you're hitting off of a pitching machine, it's like imagine you put a string where the ball comes out and put a string into where the ball crosses the plate. Right. It's like you'd want the barrel like matching a perpendicular angle there when you make contact. So the guys that are more vertical, flip side of the Soto example, where the barrel's just working off his shoulder plane, he just turn it and be behind deep in the zone. The guys that are more vertical and steeper coming into the zone, it takes longer to get the barrel turned to be square with the line of the pitch. So like deep in the zone, if your barrel's really vertical, you're not really going to be able to get it turned.
Yeah.
To where the barrel angle is square. It's like if you catch it too deep, you're just going to like beat balls into the ground, which isn't going to really happen if you're that late beating it into the ground behind the plate. So you need more time for the barrel to turn, and essentially if it's like more of like the vertical like Ferris wheelie, you need it to almost like flip and transition back uphill to get the barrel square with the line of the pitch coming in.
So when you're doing that longer pendulum, we talked about if you were to like plot the attack angle curve, once it gets negative, it gets positive real quick.
You see those guys.
You're further up that where it's changing so fast. Yeah. That's almost creating this higher attack angle.
Exactly. Yeah, because you need longer to get the barrel turned.
Yeah.
And like that vertical plane square to the line of the pitch coming in than you do in like the flatter plane. That doesn't necessarily mean the flatter plane is better.
Yeah.
Right. But it's going to be more difficult to hit the ball consistently deep in the zone if you have more of that vertical plane without having to like manipulate your posture, manipulate the barrel with your arms and hands too early. And again, that sort of thing is going to take your barrel off plane. We see that with all these metrics, that with the attack angle metrics specifically, like timing is really important. They're almost like a proxy for a timing metric.
Yeah.
And being flatter, you're going to have more margin for error with the timing with a fastball. Being more vertical, you're going to have more margin for error with a breaking ball.
Yep.
But part of that is just because you can catch it further out in front. You have more time to get the barrel out in front than you do with like the time constraint of a fastball with high spin, a ton of carry at the top of the zone.
Yeah. No,
then how would you compare the acceleration of a swing as measured by like time to achieve max bat speed versus time to turn over an attack angle through that trajectory that Jack was describing? Like, is one a better measure of acceleration than the other?
It's a really good question. It's like generally you see that, for at least what we have seen in our lab data, is that like rotational acceleration, like the blast metric, is like rotational acceleration is usually a good proxy for your sequencing, more specifically with the upper body sequencing, right? It's like, and oftentimes you'll see guys that have the like more vertical paths have some issue, isn't necessarily the right word, are less efficient in terms of sequencing.
You make it up to high speed, but it takes you longer.
It takes
because
you
of
longer
exactly
to
what
do
you
it.
just described.
And a lot of times those guys that are more vertical, sometimes you see it's because like they're taller, have longer levers. A lot of times you'll see with those guys, they will take over with their upper body a little and their arms a little bit earlier in their swing from like a sequencing perspective. So it's like as that happens, your lead arm will take over a little bit early, hands start to push in front of your chest a little bit, so you're less quote unquote connected as you're initiating your swing. And because of that, torso rotates a little bit later, so it's harder to like back up the point of contact. Those guys will tend to push a little bit more with the hands, add a little bit of that side bend back towards the catcher a little bit earlier to give themselves some like time and room to like get the barrel turned out in front.
So would you guess the opposite of that in my mind was the example we talked about earlier, Soto? If you had to make a guess for the top rotational acceleration in the league, who are the guys you're throwing at the top?
Soto's definitely near it.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'd imagine he
definitely near the top.
Do you think that connection proxy or the literal connection metric in Blast is a good gauge for rotational acceleration? Or I guess you could be well connected slowly. And
it just depends. It's not that simple.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So the last thing I wanted to get into here is I know we've seen some research out there of Jack Kelly, who's a contractor for us, and then Steven Sutton Brown with Baseball Prospectus have been doing a little bit of work with these metrics on the applications to pitching. Marek, do you want to explain what some of those have been so far?
I have Steve Sutton Brown's tweets in front of me here, where we're playing on the idea that vertical attack angle is a timing metric, the way that y'all got into, where you're measuring deviations of vertical attack angle as indexed to the expected angles when you're facing a middle four seamer. So to use his words exactly, you're saying swing tilt relative to a batter's average tilt on middle four seams tells you where they expect a pitch to cross the plate. And so obviously a lot of Steve's arsenal metrics and interaction effects like ours are meant to explore how much you're disrupting expectations for a batter thinking he's seeing one pitch versus another, and deviations in attack angle here are proxies of disruption to timing. I think is one way to interpret these results. So definitely agree with the premise that we can use this batting swing path data to validate pitching metrics that are a little more unconventional. So I think that was a good approach. He did something similar to bucket sliders that look a lot like four-seam fastballs by his equivalent of what like a match plus metric would be, to see if we could use these numbers to determine how much more likely is a batter to be behind or ahead well-matched fastball slider pairs as measured by this bat path data. So some interesting stuff there from Steve Sutton Brown. I didn't look super closely at what Jack did. I know it was bucketing things by pitch type that he was facing, but maybe you could pick up on that part.
Yeah, I believe what he was doing was very similar, looking at a timing expectation model and pitchers who can disrupt timing the most. But yeah, the main takeaway here is, I know Tanner will hate to hear it, but this is phenomenal for hitting training and maybe just as good for pitching models.
It might be better.
Yeah, we'll see.
It might be better for pitching models.
As far as like pregame scouting goes, I think this is a lot more effective for pitchers to know than hitters.
But the thing that we kicked around on the Arsenal front, Jack, sorry to cut in, was picking up on what we said earlier about if you're a hitter with a certain bat path, you sort of have to self-eliminate locations or pitch types that you can go after, when most of the time as a hitter, you're trying to eliminate things that a pitcher can throw you, so you can sell out for certain pitch types and locations and know that you've established leverage so you can shrink the uncertainty that you're facing. Well, if as a pitcher, you know that this guy's eliminating certain things, you can just, attack that all day long. And the flip side of it is not to turn everything into an Arsenal discussion, but one way to maximize Arsenal width or mix that we've workshopped here is, can you force a hitter to have to achieve, multiple swing paths to hit all your stuff? Because the more that a hitter with a single repeated swing can get to, can cover in XYZ space your full repertoire, you're not really introducing much variance with what you're doing. If you can just take the same swing and bank on some amount of contact and damage, we would probably say you have very, very small mix. But if you are forcing a guy to not only have to achieve different bat speeds, but different bat trajectories, which is, as we discussed earlier today, very hard to achieve, you're probably getting a lot out of the width of your mix.
Yeah, I think it's similar to something we've talked about with applying the Arsenal metrics to hitting advanced scouting reports. How can we use it to help these guys? And kind of putting our advanced scouting in the terms of like, what should my ball flight cue be? What am I hunting? Whatever. Like a guy like Clase, if he didn't throw 100 miles an hour, I'd imagine that's a pretty easy arsenal to prep for if it's just cutter slider. Like they're just moving away from you, see the cutter a little bit deeper, try and hit it to right center field, and he'll throw you a slider and it's a homer to left or whatever.
Yeah. It's like it gets crazy nuanced there, but like in that type of case, it's like, all right, you got to take into account like what's the guy's command like?
Yeah.
What's the general like usage location of each pitch? How does he execute him?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if he's a guy that just like nibbles on the black away with the cutter for strike, then uses the slider off for the swing and miss. Like in that case, you basically got two options. Like early in the count, you have to just like lock in on the black inside.
Yeah.
And give away anything that starts middle to middle away.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he nibbles, falls behind, has to come closer over to the plate, or you need to get closer to the plate and still hunt inside.
Oh, okay.
So you're not expanding even further off the plate. Because as you move closer to the plate, the outside corner gets closer to you.
Mm-hmm.
But subconsciously, especially the guys, and it's really weird, a lot of hitters don't like to move in the box.
Yeah.
Which is strange to me. Right. It's like, I think you should be doing everything you possibly can to try to increase that margin for error based off the pitch planes you're going to see. Right. So it's different from the right-handed pitcher for the right-handed hitter who releases closer to the center of the rubber or even like on the first base side of the rubber than the guy who's like extreme from the third base side.
Yeah.
Because the trajectory of the pitch is very different. So like based off of that, you can move where you're at in the box. You can change your orientation, right? Like the lefty facing Chris Sale, you'd be pretty dumb to not open yourself up a little bit more, right? And like maybe force him to be a little bit closer to you, especially if he's just going to hammer you with sliders away. It's like you can get a little bit closer to the plate, open up your orientation a little bit so like that extreme horizontal approach angle isn't as extreme relative to like where you're at, your orientation. That's just going to like increase that window where you're matching pitch planes. Yeah. So you can completely change your approach based off all these things.
It's really interesting that you found some guys are reluctant to do that because I feel like it's becoming more common with pitchers as we have a better understanding of like approach angles and stuff. I know Heshka's mentioned like how he will set up differently for righties and lefties or what pitch he's trying to execute. I think Wake Forest did it with Josh Hartle, who I think was a first-round pick a while ago. I mean, it seems to be something pitchers are taking advantage of, and just the pendulum of baseball seems to be the pitchers will do it first, hitters will adjust. This could be that adjustment in the future.
Could be. I think it goes a long way, especially now that hitters are starting to adopt more of this information, get more familiar with the pitch plane stuff coming in. It's just another way to increase that margin for error. And like you need to take into account like your swing profile, how your barrel moves through space, right? It's like if you're the flatter guy, like that's going to play pretty well against like the extreme horizontal approach angle guy. It's like you can get a little bit closer to the plate, open yourself up a little bit.
Yeah.
So like instead of that pitch like starting at your back hip or like behind you even, it seems like it's starting like just in front of your body.
Yeah.
So you have more room and more space to match that pitch plane and eventually get the barrel turned behind that plane and stay on it for a long time.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys.
I have one case to end on here, and this is me playing favorites, but it is a hitter that I know both of y'all like and have talked about. It's Acuña, and I'm looking at the 2023 leaderboards because I don't think he has enough swings for either 24 and 25. He's number 4 in average bat speed at 77.3 miles an hour, but no red on any of these other new metrics. And I know we just said that there is no like absolute level for these other metrics like tilt or attack angle or attack direction. So what about maybe the combination of these things is he tapping into to achieve plus exit velos, or is it maybe a metric that we're not seeing yet that explains something closer to the full signal? Is it the kind of thing that y'all were getting into earlier, which is the correlations or the interactions of these things that makes him really good, or maybe it's just like his max bat speed but his average bat speeds are plus, but are we missing something that's already available to us that explains his elite capability?
Yes, he'd be another guy close to the top of that acceleration leaderboard, much like Soto. He obviously moves about really, really, really fast, but he's like generally is a little bit flatter on the pass side, and he's just able to accelerate the shit out of it deep in the zone.
Yeah, it looks like his average attack direction is 5 degrees oppo, which is pretty extreme. but with that high acceleration, you can kind of afford to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. He could afford to do that. He also ends up with like a little bit higher attack angle.
Yeah.
So it's like with the acceleration, he's a guy that's able to like back up the point of contact a little bit. He's got the direction working the opposite field, and he has enough speed to leave the yard that way, even if he's clipping balls.
Most beautiful homer ever.
Most beautiful homer ever. You talk about the one in Dodger Stadium?
120 to right center field.
120 to right center field is insane. It got out in a blink.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's another one of those guys that hopefully we get acceleration data at some point, but I would assume he's very close to the top of that leaderboard as well.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys. Tanner, appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, fellas.
Great insights. Excited about the new data and applications to pitching and hitting. We'll see you next week.
Hopefully more hitting than pitching.